In this experiment, you will be using mass spectrometry to study the efficacy of a catalytic converter. You will also be studying the temperature dependence of the reaction, and you will vary the pressures to determine the reaction mechanism. This is the portion of the lab that will be completed by the TAs if the time does not allow the students to do it. So this should probably occur 1 hour before the lab period starts. So when you get to lab, you'll need to make sure that the bypass is turned on and the in and out valves are turned off. Make sure that the exhaust is turned on and the pump valve is turned off. And then the atmosphere vent valve is turned off as well. Toggle 1 should be on, and then you're going to want to go over to the 247 channel readout and turn that on by pulling out on the knob and pushing up. And then turn on flow controller 1 because that's controlling the argon flow. And then you'll want to set the set point to 100 SCCM. So to do that, hold the set point knob up and then twist the knob until you get to 100 SCCM. You'll need to ensure that the display controller readout is set to channel 1 so that you do indeed have the pressure for channel 1. Now you're ready to turn on the argon tank. So you'll go over to the tank and then turn the top valve all the way and then go back a quarter of a turn and then make sure that the needle valve is open and just double check that the gauge reads 10 or 20 psi. The argon should be flowing through and bubbling in the bubbler. So you should see the bubbles and then you know that it's working. So now we've got our argon flowing through the channel 1 and then in through the bypass, and then we want it to go into the mass spec. So we need to turn on the valve to the QMS, which is this green capillary valve. So turn that on. And then that will lead to the mass spec. Make sure that the argon is flowing to the mass spec before you turn it on. So now you're going to want to turn on the mass spec. So flip the rocker switch at the bottom to turn it on. And then you can start by flipping the top toggle switch, the mechanical pump. Note that the light is green and it's solid. You'll want to make sure that the green light is solid and not flashing before you turn on the next flip. So now this is not blinking, we can turn on the turbo pump. So since it's not blinking, we can go ahead and turn on the capillary flow valve. When the pressure has reached between 1 and 2 millibar and the current will begin to drop, and then you can turn on the last rocker switch, which is the sample inlet valve. You'll need to log in using /QMS_admin, and the password is gasanalyst1, and you can start that. And then you'll want to go to rgaapp.exe to open up the Gas Analyst software. So the software has been loaded and you'll want to open the program file. So you go to File and then Open. And then you're going to want to choose 4144 engine setup.rga, which is under Program Files, SRS, and RGA. And then click Open. And then you're going to want to go to Head, Connector List Setup, and then click on COM1 after it's loaded. And then click Connect, and that's connected. And then select Close. And then you'll need to turn on the filament. So you can click this button on the toolbar to turn the filament on and wait for that to initiate. So after the filament is on, you can turn on the electron multiplier. So click the button that has an E, and then there are 3 E's coming from it. And wait for that to turn on. And that's it. So now you're ready to start taking the purge scans. So to do this, you will click Go, and it will start to scan. So you'll note that the total pressure is up here at the top. You'll want to keep track of this as you continue throughout your experiment. And whenever you're ready to stop the purge, you want to press End and not Stop, because End will continue until the end of the scan, whereas Stop will stop in the middle of a scan and you won't get data. So in order to get your data, you need to press End and not Stop. You'll want to purge on bypass until the CO2 value is in the range of e to the negative ninth. So right now we're in e to the negative eighth, so it'll take a while. This usually takes about a half an hour to completely purge the bypass. So your scan is complete, and you'll need to save this data. So go to File, Save As, and then save this in a folder that has the date of your experiment, and then save the very first scan as pre-engine bypass purge, and then your name. And the total pressure is also something to take note of. So you can save that, and then you're going to want to save ASCII data by going to File, Save ASCII Data, and then name it the same thing that you named before, and save that, and then select Cancel when this dialog box pops up. To print the PDF, you're going to want to go to File, Printer Setup, and then from the Name dialog box, you're going to want to choose PDF Creator and select OK. And then go to File, Print, and then this should come up. The very first dialog box is going to be the graph. So you'll want to name it the same thing that you had before, and then graph, and then save that, and save it. And then the second dialog box that comes up will be the table, and this is what you need to print. So they'll save it as the same title, and then table, save that, save it again, and then when it comes up, you will want to go to File, and then Print to get this to come out. After you've saved, label your table with the total pressure from the instrument, and then the name of the experiment that you've just done. So pre-engine bypass purge for this one. And then you'll want to write down the total pressure, which is 574, the actual flow rate, which was 99.9 SCCM, and then you'll want to record the temperature. So to do that, you flip up the temperature switch and wait for it to load, and then write down the temperature, so 15.5 degrees, and then flip that off after you've got the temperature because it will continue to heat the catalyst if you leave it on. So now you're ready to purge the catalyst with argon. So to do this, open up the in and out valves, and then turn off the bypass valve. The bubbler should still be bubbling. And now you're ready to start the scan. So to do this, press go again, and the scan will begin. This scan will purge, and you need to continue purging until it has reached e to the negative ninth for carbon dioxide concentration. This will probably take around a half an hour. Be sure to hit end when you're done with this scan, and then you'll need to save this just like we did before and print the PDF table, and then label the table and include the total pressure, the pressure on the instrument readout, the temperature, and the actual flow rate. So when the students get to lab, you'll get out the lawnmower, and then the first thing you need to do is connect the lawnmower exhaust to the vent outside. So to do that, you'll want to put this pipe up there and then connect it to the exhaust. And then you need to connect this exhaust pipe to the gas manifold. So you will connect this and screw it on. So then the exhaust, when this lawnmower is on, the exhaust will come through here and then go into the engine gas readout. Make sure to tighten this with the wrenches to ensure that the line is properly attached. So now that your purges have been completed, you can turn off the argon. So to do that, you're going to want to set the flow rate to 0. And then turn off that screen reading. And then come over to the argon tank and close the needle valve, and then close the top valve. Now that the argon purge has been closed, you're going to want to open the bypass, close the in and out buttons, and then make sure that buffer channel 1 is still open, and you'll turn on channel 4, which is behind the gas manifold. First, you'll want to open the damper vent. After the vent is open, you'll want to close the green valve, and then make sure that the exhaust line is in the correct position. It should be below the green valve. So now that our lawnmower is set up, we're ready to take a couple scans. So first you need to check the temperature. So turn that on and write down the reading that comes up, and then turn it off again so it doesn't keep heating. And then the lawnmower is connected to channel 4, so you're going to want to set that flow rate. So to do that, you're going to turn on the readout for channel 4, and then you'll need to shift the display channel to display 4. And then you'll need to set the measurement. So hold up the set point button and then adjust the knob until it gets to 65 SCCM. Okay, looks good. And then come over to the gas manifold. Ensure that the first and fourth levers are open, and then make sure that the bypass is open and the in and out are closed. The pump, the exhaust, and the atmospheric vent valve should all be open. And now you're ready to start the lawnmower. So to do that, you'll need to flip the lever, and then you can turn the key to start the mower. So you'll need to turn on the vacuum pump down here so that it will suck the exhaust through the gas manifold. And you'll want to put your foot on the vacuum pump so you can feel it vibrating, because sometimes it likes to kick off and you can't tell over the noise of the mower. So after you've got the pump on, you'll need to turn off the exhaust valve and then turn off the atmospheric vent valve. And then you'll need to close the pump valve and then watch the pressure build up in this box. So it should get up to like 550, and then you'll need to slowly release it, just ever so slightly, until it starts to hover around 450. And then that will be a sufficient pressure so you can collect a scan. The actual flow rate should be about 35 SCCM. It'll probably fluctuate quite a bit, but then that'll be good enough. And your lab partner should stay here and then make sure that the total pressure stays about 450. They'll probably have to close the pump and build up pressure a little bit and then continue to release it by just barely loosening it. So after your lawnmower is going and the pressure is right, you can collect a scan. So to do this, you'll press go, and then you'll need to wait 10 minutes for the data to collect. After you've waited 10 minutes, you can press end, which will be a yellow button on the screen, and that will bring you to this screen here, which we have collected. So you'll need to save all of your data. So to do that, you can go to File, and then Save As, and then this was the engine bypass. So you'll need to save your file as engine bypass, and then take note of the temperature by flipping on the temperature screen, the temperature readout, and then the total pressure, which should be around 450, and you'll also need to note the actual flow rate of the engine, which should be around 35 SCCM. It works well to save the file under engine bypass and then include the temperature, total pressure, and flow rate in the file name. So you can type that in, and then it works well to copy it and then save that. And then when you're saving the ASCII data, you can just paste the same name in there, so it's easy. You don't have to type it out every single time. And save that as well. And then you can click cancel when the second dialog box pops up. And then you'll need to print the PDFs. So you can go to File, Print, and then the first dialog box that pops up will be the graph. So you can label it graph, save that, and that will come up. And then the second dialog box is the table. So you can copy and paste, or paste the name in again, and then label it as table, save that, and then you'll want to print the table. So you can go to File, Print, print that, and then after it prints out, you'll need to write down the temperature, the flow rate, and the total pressure, as well as engine bypass on this, and then label it with your name and the date. So after you've collected your scan and saved it, you'll want to open the bypass, close in and out, and then turn off your lawnmower. After you turn off the lawnmower, you'll need to open the exhaust valve so that the excess exhaust from the lawnmower can be vented outside. You'll need to set the flow rate back to 0, so hold up the set point button and twist the set point until you get to 0. And then you can turn off the channel 1 and channel 4, and then you can turn off the pump, the vacuum pump. And then you'll need to vent the vacuum pump by opening up the atmospheric vent valve, the exhaust vent valve, and then the pump vent valve. And you can see that the bubbler will start to bubble again because it's sucking in air from the atmosphere at this valve. Okay. So this is all that you'll need for the mower for day one, so you can take this down. So you'll want to unscrew the line that connects it to 4, and then you can disconnect the pipe and stow this underneath the lab bench. And then you can push the lawnmower underneath the lab bench as well. And now we'll need to do a purge on the system, doing argon like we did before. You'll want to turn on the argon so you can start the purge. So you'll need to turn off channel 4 and then move the display dial to channel 1. Flip that on, and then you'll want to make sure that the set point is at 100 SCCM. Then you can go over to the argon cylinder and turn that gas on again. So you'll want to turn on the top valve all the way, and then back a quarter of a turn, and then make sure that the pin valve is open to about 10 to 20 psi again like before. When you've got the argon flowing, you can flip the buffer for channel 1, open the bypass, make sure that the in and out are closed, make sure that the pump is closed, the exhaust vent should be open, and then the atmospheric vent valve should be closed. To make the scans go faster, we will load a different program. So to do this, you're going to go to menu bar and then head connector list setup. And you should click on the COM1 when it loads and disconnect that, and then close. And then in the menu bar, go to File, and then Open. And this time you're going to want to select 4144 catalyst.rga. And this is under Program Files, SRS, and RGA. So you'll open that one, and then you can go to Menu, and then Connector List Setup. Select COM1 again after it loads. Connect that, and then close. And now you can turn on the filament, and you're ready to begin scanning the purge. So you can click Go to start collecting that purge. And you'll want to do this at least 8 times, or until the carbon dioxide concentration is e to the negative 9th or less. So after you're done with the purge, you can save this data as well. So you'll want to go to File, Save As, and save the RGA data. You'll also need to save the ASCII data, and then you'll need to save both the graph and the table in PDF form, but print the table and label it with the temperature, the pressure, and the actual flow rate of the argon. After you've completed that, you need to purge the catalyst. And when you're ready to purge the catalyst, you can open the in and out and then close the bypass. So you can go back to the computer, press go, and then wait for the scans to complete so that your carbon dioxide concentration is in the range of e to the negative 9th. After you've saved your argon catalyst purge, you'll need to purge with a mixture of gases. It'll be 80 SCCM of argon, 15 of oxygen, and 5 of ethylene. So to turn on the oxygen and ethylene lines, you'll need to flip the second and third switches. And the second goes to oxygen, the third goes to ethylene. And then you'll need to set this on the 247 channel readout. So you'll need to turn on channels 2 and 3, and then you'll want to set the point for argon back down to 80. You'll flip the knob of the channel display readout to 2, which will control the oxygen, and you'll set that point to 15. And then you'll change that readout to 3, which is ethylene, and you'll set that to 5. Then you'll need to go over to the gases and turn them on. So we're doing the purge on the bypass, so you'll need to open the bypass and then close in and out. And then we can come over to our gases and turn them on. Okay. So we'll turn the top valve for the ethylene on all the way. And then closing it a quarter of a turn, and then opening the needle valve. And then you'll want to do the same thing by going over to the oxygen tank, turning this on all the way. And then back a quarter of a turn and opening the needle valve. So when the mix purge is going, you'll want to press go like before, and then keep track of the total pressure. You'll want to do this for 6.5 minutes. You can keep track with a stopwatch. And then at the end of your scan, you'll need to keep track of the total pressure, the temperature, and then the actual flow rates of all of our gases. And we can check those by just flipping the channel display readout. Okay. And this will need to go for 6.5 minutes, and the CO2 level should be pretty low, in the range of E to the -9th again. All right, so we're done with our first purge, so we can save the data as before. Remember, we do file save as and save the RGA data. We'll need to save the ASCII data, and then finally we'll need to save the PDFs of the graph and the table, and we'll print the table. And then we'll need to do the exact same thing, but purging the catalyst with the mix. So we'll need to open in and out, and then close bypass on the gas manifold, like we've demonstrated several times before. So after you've purged the catalyst, you'll need to start doing the temperature-dependent scans. So to do that, you will turn on the temperature adjuster, and then set the temperature to what is desired. So you'll need to do about at least 5 temperatures, and the first one should be less than 100. So to set the temperature, you'll want to press the return arrow and then the arrow on the right-hand side to set it, and then use the up and down arrows to set it to the appropriate temperature. And then when you're done, you will hit return again, and then the circular arrow twice until it comes up with run, and then your temperature will start to heat up. And you can use this dial to give it more power. So I'd recommend going all the way to 100% power until you're about 30 degrees below the necessary temperature, at which point you would turn it down to 30%. Because if you leave it at 100, it will overshoot your temperature and it will be difficult to cool down. So you'll want to let the catalyst settle at your desired temperature and then start collecting a scan again. And you'll want to repeat this process for all 5 of your temperatures. Have your lab partner watch the temperature readout, and they can adjust the dial if the temperature starts to drop too quickly, which might be a case at the hotter temperatures. After you're done with your temperature determination, you'll need to do an argon purge. So to do that, you'll want to turn off the flow rates for the oxygen and the ethylene. Oh, and you'll need to turn the dial so you can read that. And then set the argon flow rate back to 100. Oops. And you can turn off the temperature reading at this point because you're just doing an argon purge. And you'll want to collect that scan and save the data as well. So at this point, you should have 0 flow rate for the oxygen and the ethylene, and you can turn those 2 channel readouts off, and you can flip the switches or the toggles for 2 and 3, and then turn off those gases. When your argon purge is complete, you can go ahead and turn that gas off too by changing the set point back to 0 and then turning that gas off like I just demonstrated. So after you've saved your argon purge data, you'll need to close the green capillary line that leads to the mass spec and then turn off the mass spec. You'll need to turn off the filament before you turn off the mass spec, so click that button and wait for it to power down. And then you are good to turn off the rocker switches. So when you're turning off the mass spec, you want to go in the reverse order from when you turn it on. So you'll start by flipping off the sample inlet valve button, and then the capillary flow valve button. And you can wait a little bit for it to go, but you can turn off the turbo pump button. And then lastly, the mechanical pump. And as time goes by, the pressure will start to increase. And then lastly, you can flip the last toggle switch. And then you'll want to disconnect the inlet valve. So you can twist the knob and then pull out the pin of the inlet. That'll wrap things up for day 1. And then on day 2, you'll need to come in and set up the lawnmower again and take scans of the lawnmower emissions at the optimized temperature that you've determined in day 1. You'll also need to study the reaction mechanism of this process by varying the pressure of the system. So first you'll have constant oxygen and you'll vary the pressure of the ethylene, and then you'll repeat the same process using constant ethylene and varying the pressure of the oxygen.